disappearing from that aggro archetype because Illucia has been nerfed. A lot of people deem it not good enough, and for that reason the Druid is like slightly safer, because I do think Priest into Druid back in the day was 90% Priest, not even exaggerating, whereas Hunter is more winnable. I would say you can do things with early Glowflies and not get overrun by the minion heavy hands if they start off with a burn type of opener.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just need a little bit of time. You need one turn where they're not disrupting you with the Neophyte, and you can get there. Because again, the difference with this deck when compared to the Cthulhu version or the Survival of the Fittest version that Guru was bringing last week is it does not necessarily need a setup turn with the Celestial Alignment. It can just go in naturally. You have Anaconda, you have these Germinations, you have lots of mana cheat with Blooms, Innovates, and Overgrowths. Even just Glowfly Swarm alone can technically win you back the board if you have the card draw first to support it. So I agree, there's real fighting chances here for Gur, even if it's an uphill climb.
One interesting exclusion, though, is the Claw Machine, which Surrender popularized and is really catching on in other regions now as well, I hear. Gur has left it out and in favor of 2-ofs of everything except Anaconda herself, and he's included Soul of the Forest, which I'm still a fan of as a 1-of. I think that card gives you so much game against Warlock or potentially even Warriors later on, depending on what Alutemu will queue next if he has to. But the lack of Claw Machine, of course, means you have if you want to not do the hard numbers, like one less chance, quote unquote, at drawing Anaconda, but it is a slow card that a lot of the time isn't that good against Hunter, so I don't think that exclusion is going to hurt him too much here. The Vate into Fungal Fortunes is available here, but it looks like he would want to follow up with Lightning Bloom into Glowfly Swarm, so you do actually get net benefit by going Fungal now if you draw all 3 spells.
Right, so if you go Bloom, Vate Fungal, and then Bloom Glowfly Swarm, you're going to have 5 minions come out of it, right? I think, with the way it would work, the card that you draw off the top as well. Or maybe 6, actually, with the 2 cards that you draw. Whereas if you just wait a turn, I think you can get the full 7 and save the Lightning Bloom. So I'm a fan, I think, of just waiting 1 extra turn before going off here.
Gur agrees with you, just using that hero power to stem some of the bleeding, killing off Wolpertinger over Marsul, of course, to play around Warsong Wrangler, and Alutemu continuing with that keep of just small minions. He's waiting the turn for the full Glowflies, but punish is the Neophyte in some circumstances. Like, you can still bloom into that, but Alutemu going for the other punish, which is just completely filling up the board and landing a Kolek. This is far too fast. Glowfly doesn't do anything against this, but Lunar Eclipse with Glowfly, is that enough to stay alive?
I think he's technically alive, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be 7 on board.
9 on board,
Sorry,
right?
More, 9,
yeah, with the buffs, which is okay, it's reasonable. The Warsong Wrangler, though, only buffs 1 of these, thankfully, because he did correctly kill off a Wolpertinger and not a Marsul earlier on. Good job, Gur.
Yeah, and now Alutemu has to do math of his own, right? The only thing he might die to in the immediacy is Bloom into Solar Arbor, which would create 36 points of damage. He does have a taunt, so we can call it 30. So I think he can safely buff Wolpertinger, trade 1, send everything else face, and set up for a quick aim shot lethal next turn.
So he would be pushing the 7 damage face, which means another 5 next turn. It's not guaranteed lethal, right?
I think he pushes 9 face, right? I only want to trade 1, 2, 2 and leave my taunt intact.
Oh, you want to go face with the Wolpertinger. Right, yes.
Yeah.
Got ya.
And so that would leave Gur at 6. So even if he hero powers, you have aim shot, hero power for lethal. I think that's a lock against even a relatively good outcome of Gur's hand. You, of course, can't play around the double bloom Cenarian ward type of outcomes. I'd rather play around the counter lethal. So Alutemu gonna go for that 1 trait, like we outlined there, Wolpertinger face, and he sets up for just aim shot lethal.
There you go. You and Alutemu both on the same page. I think very well laid out and very well executed by Alutemu. the only out that you have here is some massive Cenarian or Anaconda nonsense, which quite clearly Gur does not have access to. So he just needs to assume that he's alive, I think, and that there's no burn damage in hand, and then try to move on from there. Because otherwise the game is over anyway. He needs to hope that he gets Anaconda next card, or maybe that Cenarian can keep him alive with Bloom next turn.
Does that mean Germination a 2/2?
I think so, right? Like,
yeah, it's the only way to stay alive. I'd agree. I don't think Bloom Nourish for draw gets him anything relevant with only 1 mana remaining, so he is going to just create a measly little fly taunt here. Hope to stay alive on board, which he does, but Alutemu knew about this outcome. If he didn't have that aim shot in hand, I'd be interested to see if Alutemu would just think about sending everything face and not going for any trades at all. But because he had that flexibility with the burn from hand, I think it was correct to just play around the Bloom Solar Arbor out. Very nicely done.
Very nicely done. He got the good hand, and finally from Hunter, we're seeing these early pushes that we've been missing. Like, it felt like every early game, even against the decks that don't contest board, they were just unable to put forward a very threatening board, whereas this was as threatening as it's possible to be, especially with the Kolek as well for the +1 attack buff on everything. Absolutely perfect and very well played by Alutemu, and well spotted by you, of course, to get that lethal at the end, which means that I agree with Gura for now. His best counter between Rogue and Mage is undeniably the Rogue, a matchup that I think you and I are still in agreement on, that with any kind of a reasonable hand, mainly through Octobot, of course, from the Rogue, you should be able to contest enough damage from the Hunter on the other side, lock down that board, because, you know, if you imagine all these durable infestations, that need targets from the Hunter, if all the minions are cleared off the board, they become a lot less potent, and from there Rogue usually can get a strong counter lethal, especially with Broomstick in the list, which is just the cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah, a special tech inclusion that Gur's been a fan of from the beginning. He's kind of messed around with many 1-ofs in this list. I think he tried 1/1 Thief at one point. Now he's landed on 1 Broomstick, 1 Penflinger, 2 preps. We have Give Please Cutting prep in a different list. There's just a lot of debate still about the nitty-gritty of the list, but I think most people have landed in agreement that you should still be running at least 1 copy of 1 Thief. Foxy Fraud has gotten very unpopular in APAC, and Kazakus, everybody's bringing it now. In the first week that Garrote Rogue really became popular, not everyone had Kazakus, but I think people realized that it just lends so much flexibility and even refill if you need it in these aggro matchups, or healing, that it's too good to exclude. Gur, with that field contact in the opener, I definitely like the look of it, but it needs support, right? He is on the coin, which I generally like to be as Rogue, just to have more resources. I wonder if he's going to hold on to Prize Plunder just as a clear effect, but I'd be more interested in looking for Octobot, if you ask me.
It is tempting, isn't it? Like, in a way, I'm almost considering Swindle as well. I know it's a little slow, but like Coin Swindle on 1 does lose the coin, which sucks, but you can pick up some good spells like Shadow Step, Brain Freeze, even Prep can be pretty useful. But I think on balance, I agree. Field Contact, and I think I'm probably also keeping Prize Plunderer, just to have something to play in these early turns.
He does keep them together. I do definitely advocate just keeping like a 1 mana 2/1 if you're on the play versus Hunter. It's very powerful just to drop that minion outside of them having exactly True Aim Crescent, which is a 1-of in these lists. On coin, it's a bit difficult to balance getting your Prize Plunder activated and maintaining enough resources. But with this Octobot, problem solved, Derek. We're slamming that down.
Yeah, 8 legs, no worries. Gur is very happy with that draw. I think you just coin it out, right? There's no punishes, and then next turn, Field Contact +1, Kazakus the turn after. Oh, it writes itself. A symphony.
Alutemu with not even the slightest grimace or wince at the Octobot off the top. I think he knows, or rather expects, that in the theory of their lineup building, you don't want to, or you don't expect to sweep with the Face Hunter, right? It probably gets countered by the Rogue, but then Alutemu has his Control Warrior waiting in the wings to prey on this Garrote Rogue. So of course he's still going to give this a good shot, but it's not a disaster if he loses the Hunter. It's kind of a disaster hand though, because not only can he not kill the Octobot, he can't go for a big counter development to maybe try and stick something after the first proc turn from Gur.
Well, Gia, I would actually say that the lack of Grimace from Alutemu is because he is well used to losing to Garrote Rogues, be it on ladder, be it to certain famous, well-known casters that you may have seen on stream yesterday. And yes, I will say that he ran a poll when it was going on, and only 43% of his audience voted for me, which I was deeply hurt by. But ignoring that, yes, I was still able to beat Alutemu on ladder yesterday, and it's the crowning achievement of my life.
Well, right now he's facing Garrote Rogue.
Hey.
And I think it's going to be even lower than 43%.
Yes.
Gur going for the Orc Merchant for the full clear, as opposed to protecting his field contact, because it's kind of the same, right? If you leave a 1-1, the Divine Shield doesn't really exist anyway. They can always trade it. And he still has his choice of very strong follow-up, the Neophyte into One Thief, into Kazakus for 1 cost, buff the whole board. Alutemu can pack it up, because from this situation, the only way I think Hunter can realistically race the Rogue is if they hit the Rhino and have the weapon, which, you know, Alutemu can have the Rhino, but because he doesn't have the weapon, he only gets 1 charge of that, and all this burn is nowhere near close to getting Gur down to danger zone.
Yeah, this doesn't even come close. This is so far over for Gur. He obviously, as you said, is looking for 1 cost buff, ideally. With the pickup of Brain Freeze, you could theoretically go 5 cost buff, just because you're so unlikely to see your board cleared, and that will just, I don't know, maybe lock out the game even quicker, just because you already have a strong 1 cost play. But either one is going to win the game, and there you go. He went for 5, gets the +2/+2.
Yeah. True enough. I think the 5 is even safer to a certain extent, because the 1 cost buff doesn't actually protect everything from Explosive Trap, which is maybe a way Alutemu gets back with the Rinling Rifle, but the +2/+2 gets everything above that 2 health range. And there's the Rinling. Alutemu trying to get that explosive, you'd have to assume, so I think he whacks the Kazakus here. Okay, it's going face.
It's got to be the Kazakus, right? Like, you have to play as if you get it, or the game is just over.
Yeah, and you have to play as if Gur took a not buff golem, hopefully. From Alutemu's perspective, this is probably a 5, right? Because he didn't just slam the golem right away. And if the 5 isn't the buff, then Alutemu might survive. But, you know, we saw this from Shaxi yesterday. Gur knows what's up. Everything going to survive against Explosive Trap, and Alutemu is dead.
Trades first because, and then goes for the lethal, I guess. Even if it was Freezing Trap, it's lethal no matter what. And there we have it. Alutemu and Gur both getting pretty one-sided games to start things off. Very, very quick start to the series. With Face Hunter dominating the Druid, Rogue dominating the Hunter, the circle of life as it should be. But now for Alutemu, in terms of anti-aggro decks, or I suppose not anti-aggro necessarily, but anti-rogue decks, the Warrior feels absolutely premium. This has to be one of the main reasons why he's bringing it and why he's not banning Rogue consistently.
Yes, that Libram Paladin as an X factor I think makes a lot of sense for Alutemu to ban away, because it does have tools to potentially beat Face Hunter, and it can definitely get over the line versus Control Warrior because of your persistent 8/8s just sticking to the board every single time. It's not infinite threats, especially now that Libram Paladins are not generally running Penflinger, but just the back-to-back Librams, especially if you hit Lady Liadrin, can sometimes be too much for Warrior to deal with. I will say though that versus Rogue, Warrior can very easily get this done, akin to back in the days of Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior. You simply have to stack that armor above the 48 breakpoint, which is the maximum base amount of spell damage that the Rogue can get. They can technically create more with Wand Thief for Primordial Studies, or getting a Golem for spell damage, or even just generating burn from the Wand Thief, but it's really difficult to maintain all those combo pieces because the Warrior's not just doing nothing the entire game. Like, we do know Alutemu's not running the big Warrior threat package, but there's still the likes of Rattlegore, Kel'Thuzad, Shadowhunter, Vol'jin to think about.
Yeah, the one thing I suppose that might be solace for for Gur. I mean, it's more so with Big Warrior, because at least with Big Warrior, there's not that many ways to gain armor. Like heavy plate and obviously the hero power does stack up for a lot, but it's not insurmountable levels. However, when you transition over to this Control Warrior as opposed to the Big Warrior, you have Cargo Guard, you have the Armor Vendor as well. Obviously, there's Barov to go with your Rancor as well, just to guarantee yourself the maximum armor gain possible. It does become pretty difficult to chew through all the armor unless you're doing like the full 42 or even more if you can by generating spell damage off Kazakus.
And Alutemu started off with an amazing hand. The Corsair cash into Outrider's Axe. He has the Cargo Guard for 3. Gur not with a pretty good start for himself, keeping Field Contact Octobot, that dynamic duo. But again, with this deck, I feel like the approach from the Rogue should still be not to necessarily save all of their combo pieces for the 48. I think they get net benefit on damage by playing out a bit more proactively on board, because they need to supplement some of the Garrote damage with minions hitting face. And it's going to be difficult for Gur to achieve that overall, but first things first, deal with the Cargo Guard if possible. There's a Prize Plunderer, so that can be taken down.
Ooh, flow at this point in the game, I think it's still bad. It's probably not worth it. I was going to suggest the rigged fair game just because it's a reasonable shot. They don't attack you in the face, and just turboing to the bottom of your deck I think is very valuable.
I agree. I also like the rigged fair game, but you know what? If Gur is thinking that he is going to try and get the combo as fast as possible within a short window, because that's sometimes you can just try and beat the warrior before they actually reach all their maximum armor gain cards, then the flow somewhat makes sense, because it's discounting the other Swindle, the Shroud, the other Garrote in his deck. Maybe. But if he took it, he's playing it now with a 1 Thief, I'd have to assume.
You'd think so, but then all of a sudden, are you using all your fuel for the Field Contact engine? You want to make sure you actually have cards to play with it, because obviously as soon as he finds another Prize Plunderer or one of the Org Merchants, Gur is, or I guess Guardian Org Merchant specifically, Gur is going to proc his Octobot and then start to go with the Draw Train. And he needs 1-cost minions to fuel that.
I'd agree. I think by playing the 1 Thief, you kind of consign yourself to having to find Shroud, Swindle, or Secret Passage to supplement this hand a little bit more, which I think is a reasonable thing to do. The 1 Thief can also find him card draw itself, because as it stands, this hand doesn't have a procker one way or another, right? So you're still a couple turns away from actually popping off with a Field Contact. But Gur agrees with you. He's going to hold on to it, and Alutemu gets yet more card draw. This Corsair Cache going to find him either the other Outrider's Axe or that Bulwark of Azeroth, which is an amazing card in the matchup to just lock out those Garrote damages if you don't even have enough armor, which Alutemu probably will have enough armor. Indeed,
yeah. Weird game as well, though, given that Alutemu hasn't pressed hero power once. One of the things you want to consistently do as much as possible in this matchup, but you know, I can see why. He's just spending his mana proactively. This is about as good of a start as you can hope for. And curving into Mutinous as well, which can, of course, be absolutely clutch. If you can get yourself an Octobot, obviously an Org Merchant, an Ethereal Org Merchant, Ethel. If you can eat her, then you're very happy. But even a Field Contact can just make things really awkward for your opponent, because then they're almost forced into using Shadow Step on an Org Merchant instead.
There's that Shroud now, though. Very likely to pull a procker for the Octobot, and that's a premium hand to discount, isn't it, with the Kazakus as well. I'm super interested what type of Golem Gur is going to go for here. In our extensive testing of this matchup, we've even messed around thinking, is the 10-cost Golem ever a way to get there with the +4 spell damage? But it's too early to think about that from Gur. I think both our players are on a higher level in this matchup where they're not thinking about just getting maximum damage in a world where your opponent doesn't do anything, because your opponent is going to do things, as Alutemu has demonstrated. He's playing out minions. He's not prioritizing hero power, because the minions might actually save him more health in the long run by proactively threatening Gur or trading the minions for Alutemu.
Heavy plate hero power does make sense to me. I think also trading in the 2/2, yeah, we want to start racking up this armor now as we're approaching, you know, turn 8, turn 9. Your opponent hasn't played Octobot or drawn yet off of a contact, so it feels like they're a couple turns away at least. But you do want to start getting that armor in now while you can. And then as soon as they go for a big board, Rancor to mop all of that up. And it's looking pretty good for Alutemu still.
Ooh, a fireball. Sign me up for that. Some extra damage. I actually thought Gur was going to start with Octoproc and then end Kazakus for a 1 cost, but he wants to discount what comes off of the Wand Thief. So that means that the rest of this turn after the proc is not very efficient, because I don't think he wants to use any more of these battle cries.
Yeah. I guess swing face, dagger up again. Yeah, it's not great, is it?
Little bit slow, but that's okay. He still has the field contact Garrot in hand. He's holding on to Shadow Steps, holding on to, well, I guess Ethel's not in hand yet, but he won't be using that until the damage has come together. Alutemu last turn didn't swing into a minion because I think he feels that he already has most of the tools he needs in hand. Like the Mutinous and the Rattlegore are the best ways of counter-pressuring the Rogue. And he has the Corsair cache to potentially find the Bulwark, so he was valuing health at that point. He can get a decent Rancor here if he likes. Not to say that 6 minions is the best you're ever going to get from it, but in terms of mana efficiency, I kind of like the look of it.
I mean, I'm just thinking about Mutinous here realistically, because it looks like he's going to go for it on this turn. But you have to think, how important is it to hit exactly Ethereal Org Merchant? Because if it is, then you can just wait, because they're always going to be sitting in hand, right, until the combo. But if you're happy to just gobble a field contact, as he does here, it's still a pretty big deal in order to get one of those. And I think, as you could tell from Alutemu's facial expression, he's a happy chappy with that one gone.
Yeah, that's a big chomp for Alutemu there. And I think after seeing the Octo proc, there's a good chance there's a field contact in hand. And even if you don't eat contact, there's other good outcomes, like the other Octobot and Kazakus are both major resources for Gur to use. He's going in now with the last field contact, which means that he either has to end by stepping this or get to the bottom of his deck. I don't think he's capable of doing the latter, so that means a step having to be used is minus maximum 8 damage already.
Yeah, it's a big, big deal. I wonder if we're even at the point where he picks 5 cost Golem to try and hit spell damage +2, as he is offered there if he wants it. And I imagine in this matchup, you're probably taking it, right? I don't think the board presence from the Golem is good enough.
I agree. Ends with step contact. It hurts that he has to face tank the Mutinous a bit, but it's okay. The plan is still together, right? I don't necessarily know if he'll have the mana to do everything at once, but with another Octobot charge, it's possible, right? If you have 1 Shadow Step, 2 Ethereal Aug Merchants, and the spell damage +2, that is a total of 5 spell damage.
Right.
Which means that you actually deal 56 with both Garrots, right?
Yes. Yes. Or 48, right? Isn't
48?
it? 48. It's 6 times 8.
Oh yes, my bad.
Yeah, sorry, my mental maths needs some work, but could still be here. I mean, Rancor is obviously reasonable enough. You could. It's difficult to make it so that it's more clean though, because if you go Minefield first, there's a chance you just snipe off the 2-1 before you get the extra armor.
Yeah, I'd agree. Going to take the draw here. Alutemu aware of breakpoints. At 48 with the Golem is something to keep in mind. Currently at 47.
Now 49. It's a lot, but he is, if we get the full damage combo on this turn, technically dead. But I do think that Gur is still 1 turn off being able to do everything right. Like, this is 7, maybe not 7 mana, because he could reduce the cards in hand, but it's like at least 6 he's already spending. So I agree. We're taking a setup turn here before you go with the full combo.
I love that he's prepping the Fireball as well. He still leaves himself a lot of mana to dump cards with the Secret Passage and make sure that that hand doesn't actually have too many cards in it if he has to draw anything else from this passage. It's not amazing though. I think he ends up just dumping everything but the Ethel.
Agreed. Yeah, prep is almost useless at this point because well, not useless, I will say. The prep, the Garrote is going to cost 1, right, because of the flow that was played earlier, and there's a reasonable chance that you can discount it off the Octobot anyway.
It's a very big deal that he did not hit the Shroud of Concealment here. Imagine if he got that from the passage, he would be so much quicker towards the lethal here. We did see his remaining cards, and I don't think he necessarily has the mana to do everything next turn, but I could be wrong. If the other Garrote costs 1... Wait, hold on. If you start Field Contact, Octo Pen Flinger, that's 3 mana spent, you have 6 spare.
Yeah.
You can draw 1 more card for free because the Golem is not a battle cry, right? I don't think it necessarily gets there. If you get the Og Merchant off the top, maybe, because you can step the Og Merchant and then have that continue drawing for
Right,
you.
yeah. Okay.
But now that Alutemu's equipped his Bulwark, he saved that Corsair cash for that. It's actually great that he drew the other Outrider's Axe, so the Corsair guaranteed gets the Bulwark by this point. He's relatively safe, and I think he should Minefield the 1 Octobot to preserve as many charges as possible.
Yeah, Minefield or maybe even Shield Slam. I guess the one thing he's afraid of is that this could theoretically still be a 10-cost Golem, right? So he does want to make sure he has answers to that. But I think Brawl or Bladestorm, whether it's a big or a small board, should be able to do that relatively easily. Oh, that is Org Merchant off the top, but for now, Gur kinda needs to spend a few turns just punching through the weapon, right?
Yes, I think he is forced into Hero Power Face and Redagger here. Since Alutemu is at 43, Gur is technically allowed to use some bleeds to get through a Bulwark. But again, if we are counting his maximum damage as 48, that means that you can only let 1 bleed hit Alutemu for the Bulwark. So I do think he has to dagger up here. I don't know if he takes the turn to just reduce this hand with the Octobot. I don't think he has to just yet. The fear, of course, is Alutemu just slams Rattlegore and suddenly he does not have all this luxury to wait.
Yeah, I mean, again, the cards that are actually left in his deck are not especially important to discount. Obviously, the second Org Merchant is nice. But it does mean he uses a Battle Cry now, obviously, is the downside. But I guess the problem, the thinking is that once he gets through the Bulwark anyway, he'll have naturally drawn every card in his deck. He doesn't really need a lot of draws off the field contact.
True enough.
Well, we obviously want to clear off this board, which comes in the form of a relatively easy Minefield. It could just be Rattlegore provoke Shield Slam? Is that crazy, just to clear off every minion to make sure no charges are deleted off your Bulwark?
Like that, yeah.
Let's do it.
I think it's super worth it, yeah. Sorry, I had to recalculate the Garrote math. I do think it's 56 he has, right?
Oh, right, my bad.
7 times 8. Because you have +5 spell damage, and the base damage of 1 Garrote is 2, right?
Apologies, right, okay.
So if it's actually 56 right now, and Alutemu is at 43, each bleed deals 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can still only let 1 bleed hit the Bulwark, so I don't think he has it yet. I think he still has to wait until next turn, where he can swing the Bulwark down to 2 charges. I might be wrong. This is melting my brain a little bit, but if he's going for the Golem now, he believes, Derek, he believes.
He thinks it's time to go. I mean, to be fair, the Rattlegore is going to kill him in a couple turns anyway. But like you say, he's all in here, going with maximum card draw as well, which is probably correct. He does need to be a little afraid of fatigue, because he could just kill himself with the hit of the Rattlegore included next turn. But he does need that Garrote first anyway.
Right, so this is the Oh, sorry, it's not 56. He had to use a Shadow Step, so it's not... it's only +4 spell damage, not +5. So this is nowhere near enough by my calculation.
No, he did. He used the Shadow Step on a minion. It is the 56. He just used it to...
No, but
like spell damage.
I counted 2 Shadow Steps for the 56.
Oh, right.
One Shadow Step, right? So it's +3 and then +2 spell damage.
No, you were
In any
right.
case,
it is +7. Yeah, I mean, it's not getting there, but...
It is not getting there, no. Which means that Alutemu simply has to go for a Rancor, and that's it. That's all Ger's stats.
Yeah, simply ran out.
Almost out of cards.
And I mean, for Gur, like, he, I think, knew this wasn't lethal. He was just praying that maybe he was mistaken somehow. You know, this is difficult to do the math quickly enough. It does damage his opponent a bit. Maybe they mess up. I don't know, because he wasn't winning the game the other way either. As Kresh, Rancor, trade, GG.
You could have made the argument that Gur could wait one more turn technically because he wasn't dead to Rattlegore, but with that wait, he would still be 1 off lethal, I believe, because 1 dagger goes through and then he gets 7 more damage going face, right? Because 1 dagger takes off a charge of the Bulwark. Then Alutemu would have survived at 1, not even counting the fact that Alutemu has 1 more turn to press armor up, to maybe play a heavy plate, play the Kresh. I don't want to say it's correct or incorrect for Gur to do what he did because he was in an awful spot no matter which way you look at it. But
yes,
I think maybe like the tiny % chance that he might win involves waiting a little bit longer if you had done the math, which obviously both you and I struggled. I'm not even sure if I was right or wrong at many different points.
I feel like with our powers combined, we were kind of close, which is about the best that we can hope for. Whereas for Gur, he was just praying that he was an idiot, whereas I don't think he was. He knew there was no real chance of getting that game at the end. Each counter having done its purpose so far. The Hunter being the Druid, Rogue being the Hunter, Warrior being the Rogue. And now on the backswing, Gur obviously only has 1 deck left. He needs to rely on the Mage to get there. And I gotta say again, this feels like a pretty strong counter queue. Warrior surely has to struggle against the literal infinite damage that Mage can put forward.
Yes, the Ignites all the way at the bottom of the deck. Unfortunately, you can't run Altar of Fire as Warrior to just delete those. It is literally infinite, but it's not infinite within your time as well as Mage, right? Because you do run out of draw effects. Like, you could theoretically end up with an empty hand and 2 Ignites in your deck, and you only draw 1 of them at a time. And in that window, the Warrior could have played Rattlegore. They could have played Mutinous doesn't really eat anything, so let's say Kresh here.
Right.
And that can be sometimes enough pressure to beat out the Mage. I don't think it's very likely. It's difficult for Warrior to get that done, especially because this is Control Warrior, which has even less threats, but not impossible.
Not impossible indeed, but a tough one to get through, and I do still think that if, as long as Gur is not playing thoughtlessly and allows his Varden to be eaten by a Mutinous, he should be just fine. Should be absolutely fine. And with a start like that, Incanter's Flow, even Ice Barrier, weirdly enough, is not a terrible card to see at the start, just because it's a guaranteed frost spell that you can play no matter what your opponent does.
Alutemu insta-trading that Librarian back. Honestly, I'm not really sure what in this meta you particularly want to silence other than opposing Rattlegores, but maybe that's in the deck for that purpose.
Well, it could be used to silence his own Rattlegore in this matchup to get rid of a freeze, were that to come in later on. That's one of the main ways that Mage can shut down big threats from their opponent. Yeah,
if he's gotten Gur down to 9 somehow. Or whatever the size the Rattlegore is by that point. The Headmaster Kel'Thuzad I don't think is necessarily going to get that much work done. It could later if Alutemu manages to maneuver Rattlegore on the board and then you go Barov and then Kel'Thuzad and an AoE effect, or even just a shield slam that would multiply your Rattlegores, but that all seems very far into the future, whereas Gur is progressing through the quest at a decent pace.
And for Alutemu, if we're talking about how you get your opponent down to 9, it starts with dealing 18 through both Outriders' axes. I don't think these are going anywhere other than the dome. And proccing Ice Barrier, Yes, there's a negative consequence because your opponent can then play the second one, which allows them to play their Frost spell. But you have to win somehow in this matchup, right? You're not going to not hit your opponent the entire game. And so I do fully agree it's the time to start swinging.
Completely agree. You can basically just put the mage at 46 starting health and set that as your benchmark. Primordial's a big pickup for Gur because strangely enough, he was lacking Arcane with this hand.
Yeah.
He also doesn't have a target for these freeze effects at the moment, but because he has Primordial Studies, he does get one. However, they're all expensive or take a while to wake up.
I think you're just taking Guild Trader, right? You can go Guild Trader, Ignite, and then just freeze your Guild Trader. It gets you to the next level of quest.
Yep, I agree. It's not ideal to be shuffling Ignite back this early, but I just want to get Varden online as soon as possible if I'm Gur.
Yeah.
The Aegwin is not going to interact with anything but one thief, is it?
I don't think he's even running that.
Oh, he's not? Okay,
I think
so
it's
the
a zero
Aegwin...
minion.
Yeah. Aegwin has 0 upside from its Death Rattle then.
Wow, interesting.
Here he goes Phoenix, which leads me to believe Gur values his freezes to actually freeze something from Alutemu.
Right.
Which, to be fair, like the threats, quote unquote, could start coming on this turn from Alutemu, right? Vol'jin, Kel'Thuzad, Coin, Crash. I don't know if that's a solid enough reason because he also has the Flurry, but to be fair, if he uses both these freezes back to back, it's bad because he still needs an Arcane spell to actually get him to level 3.
Yeah, I think the other one is also he's actually trying to get value out of these Ignites because chip damage over the course of the mid-game is worth something, admittedly. I still think the way this is shaping out, I'd much rather have a minion I can target with this Snap Freeze because now, you know, if you want to play Runed Orb, you have to then accept that's an Arcane spell that's not going towards the quest. Like, he could be pretty close towards level 3 being done here.
Ooh, Corsair picks up Bulwark here for 5 charges, which could also be very relevant for Alutemu towards the end of the game, right? If they get into a stalemate position where it's a Rattlegore staring down 2 Ignites for like 10 damage apiece, the Bulwark can buy Alutemu the time he needs, potentially.
Potentially.
Streak.
Okay, just ping pass again, I think. Yep.
It's technically quest completion, or sorry, is he on 1 out of...
Level 2.
Yeah. With no Arcane played?
With just Arcane played, I believe, right?
Okay, so we actually can complete the quest if there's a Flurry target next turn, right?
Yeah.
The Phoenix wakes up and that's the Snap Freeze target. Potentially he picks up something else for a Frost spell from this Runed Orb. Like, we could see the Dawn Grasp entering the hand. However, that's not necessarily something Gur wants to do without immediately playing it because of Vol'jin and Mutinous.
Do have to be a little afraid. Well, obviously Alutemu trying to figure out ways to dump cards from his hand and also whether it's worth developing threats of any kind. I think the answer is still a resounding no. Coin Rattlegore, I definitely think should be the first minion he plays, if any. But wow, with Fireball off the top, Gur taking this Phoenix has actually netted himself a lot of damage.
It has. I go Hot Streak, so leaving himself the potential to play Arcanist Dawn Grasp all in this turn.
True, yeah.
And of Cold is just that little bit expensive to do everything he likes, though, but I think you're still meant to take it and then play Fireball, play Cone of Cold, and then hold the Runed Orb. So you can go Rune Orb and Varden next turn. But he's taking Devolving to deal with Rattlegore, it looks like.
Yeah, I think I like this actually. This is, because he's taking a very slow approach, the one way I see him losing is Rattlegore into gain a bunch of armor and Bulwark, and he doesn't have a way to deal with Rattlegore. Or as you said, he runs out of card draw at the end of his deck. But once you deal with Rattlegore, I think that's pretty much just a lock. Like, it's impossible for them to pressure you at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. Especially since Gur at the moment doesn't have Cram Session, doesn't have even the Refreshing Spring Water.
Yeah.
Takes the Shattering Blast. Means it's only a Frost spell at the moment lacking, right, to get the Varden down. So he has the option of going Shattering Dawn Grasp, or if Alutemu plays a minion, Flurry Dawn Grasp. Works out nicely.
Oh, it's really awkward though for Alutemu because the one spell that hasn't been played is Frost, and it's reasonable to assume that if you clear the board, they won't be able to proc the quest if you don't play Rattlegore. But at the same time, like, they're going to play Varden eventually. I think you still just want to get Rattlegore at the earliest possible opportunity and just pray that that's enough. Maybe they can't freeze your board and play Varden at the same time. I don't know.
I agree. I think you accept that you play Rattlegore and it's not going to be able to attack, but if it's frozen and the Dawngrass comes on board, Alutemu can go for a big board swing of, because there's a Rattlegore on board, you go Kel'Thuzad Provoke, right? Then you get their own Varden. You could even Shield Slam your Rattlegore to get a second Rattlegore with all of that. I mean, this plan is blown up by the devolving missiles, but I think Alutemu has to go for it, right? As opposed to waiting for Gur to just eventually find an ice barrier or something. But he's going to devolve this straight away. I feel like a real dum-dum for suggesting anything other than that. Now that I see what Alutemu had in store, right? With possibility to copy Rattlegore, because if it dies through Provoke with the Kel'Thuzad played, you do get another copy as well as whatever minion killed it.
Well, to be fair, Alutemu can still make a pretty juicy board next turn. Highmane is not bad to resummon off Provoke, because again, the interaction between the Headmaster and Kel'Thuzad and Provoke, which I did not understand when we did it in testing, is that anything that dies in the process of attacking each other from Provoke does get resummoned. So Highmane Varden, if you shield slam it first, this is a pretty scary board.
Yeah, we take those. Gur thinking about Shattering Blast this, which would respect the Kel'Thuzad a bit more heavily, but does he need it for anything else? Honestly, outside of Rattlegore, the only other threat is Kresh. Not even a real threat, it's 3 attack.
Yeah. And it doesn't actually...
Alternatively, could just first flame it.
Okay. Leaving it up is a little bit scary now.
I'm so excited. This is my favorite thing that we discovered in testing ever. Shield Slam the Varden, Kel'Thuzad, Provoke the Highmane, and now he gets 2 2/2s, a 6/5 with Death Rattle Fresh on it, and a 7/7 Dawngrass.
So ridiculous. I still don't understand how this works. Like, I know it's meant to work this way, but I still don't get it. Like, how does this make sense? It's ridiculous. It's so strong.
You can argue that it's the minion that kills the cards. So Kel'Thuzad said, when your spells, I don't really know card text, but it's
strong.
Still a consequence of the spell. If the spell destroys any minions, summon them. That's what Kel'Thuzad's card text says. So that is kind of vague because the Provoke didn't destroy the minions directly. But it works, so I'm happy. It's just cool.
It works, yeah. And look at the trouble that Gur is in now. He's got double Ignite that he doesn't want to shuffle back into his deck. First Flames deal 5 damage apiece, or First Flame, Second Flame, which is good. You know, you can chew through the first half of a Highmane. Ping can be used to take out the Kel'Thuzad. But the headline is, he's kind of in trouble, actually, against this board.
He just hasn't found Spring Water or Cram Session this entire time, and he's going Ignite Ping so as not to waste the damage on First Flame, it looks like, but having that shuffled into the deck gets him farther away from finding a Cram Session. He's in trouble. Although if he does manage to pick apart this board, Alutemu's threats are running dry for sure.
Okay, well, he's getting there. Obviously, only a Fire Sale needed to completely wipe this board and be back in a very strong position. But it's still scary for the moment. This is a much better situation for Alutemu than I was anticipating at the start of this game, especially when Rattlegore has been devolved.
I would have to agree. Cargo Guard getting in there for the 2 attack. This is the Pirate Warrior you were looking for, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
He needs Cram Session, needs Spraying Water. That's a Spring Water.
Oh, there we go. There we go. That's more like
That's it. Fire Sale.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and AI. Okay. I think crisis averted.
Yeah, we're back on track. AI, Cram Session, everything you could possibly want. This is what Mage does. It lets you think you're winning and then just claws it away from you. right when you're just about to take the win.
Alutemu got surprisingly close. If Gur had drawn another brick.
Yeah.
Like, technically, there were 6 good draws in his deck and 2 tradables, which are decent draws as well by that point. But there was a chance Alutemu could use that window to get in there. I think he gave it the best shot he could, but that window is well and truly shut, bolted tight, boarded up, no way out. Alutemu concedes. We are going to game 5.
Just throws it down. I mean, say what you will about these Japanese players. They know when to throw in the towel. He's not going to stick around for a game that he has no chance of winning because, as we were saying, there's no minions in the deck for Gur, so Mutinous isn't going to do anything. Kresh is not a real threat. It's really Mutinous or Bust is the only real win condition that this warrior has against control or combo decks. And so when that was done, it was over. He gave it a very good shot, but it means that Alutemu, having won the first game of the series, gets the final counter queue, if you will, which is the OTK Demon Hunter, a deck that I have seen tell on social media of people saying is the best deck in the game once again. OTK Demon Hunter, no matter what is done to it, just does not want to die. And still here in this version without brutes, I can see their point. It does still seem like a very strong archetype.
Ilgi's back again. Because everything's been brought down to its level, sort of. And Glide, as it turns out, is a very powerful card. I am surprised you didn't do the thing I did with Gur's key cards the other week, or like the first week.
Oh, yeah.
Put 3 glides in here for Alutemu, but I understand 3 glides is not enough spaces. The man played 7 yesterday. 7.
Yeah, it was pretty filthy. It was against some kind of international law. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised if Alutemu is a fugitive at this point because, man, triple glide against him was in 1 game and then 3 more and then 1 more. 7 altogether. Absolutely disgusting. And against Mage, I don't think it's going to be a very different story. But glide is still a very, very potent card in this matchup. I don't think you're going to get the kind of matchup where you can glide their quest reward back into the deck as you can often do in the Demon Hunter Mirror. Where they can't really complete the quest and play it on the same turn. But even so, it just means there's no minions being played, very difficult for Mage to complete the quest, and Glide just makes it so much harder for them to accrue any kind of hand card advantage.
Not to mention, if Alutemu holds on to the Glide for the Varden completion turn, he can just put that back in Gur's deck. Gur,
maybe.
I think if he has the option to, will not put Varden into his hand until he's able to immediately play them. But it's going to be difficult to maneuver that for sure, especially if Alutemu's gliding back his quest completion tools in the first place. And Alutemu is definitely gearing up for a glide on turn 4, you'd have to assume, because this Il'gynoth in the opener is going to make drawing cards to finish his own quest very difficult.
Look at this as well. Alutemu pushes the 1 with hero power on 1. That is an Alutemu exclusive play. Tell me one other player who'd do that. None.
Neon Ladder, when this deck first came out, and you realize you don't always do anything but quest on turn 2.
Okay, well, apart from Gia and Alutemu, there is not one person in the world who would do this, and I stand by that. And the 50,000 people who are about to tag me on Twitter in half an hour. This catches up with the delay saying I'm an idiot. Either way, leading up into a glide still on turn 4, I think is absolutely the plan for Alutemu. Tempo Peddler does not sound good in this matchup, so just trade it because it's going anyway, and maybe you get to dump a bad card from your deck, like Aura.
Perfect. Just thinning the deck. It's like playing Secret Passage in Rogue, you know? Just play stuff from your original hand before you glide, because it's all going back anyway. Secret is known to Alutemu because it proc the Frost on Gur's quest. Coin going back in there is pretty painful, and he hits another glide! Stop it, Alutemu!
To be fair, Fellscreen Blast is a little tough to get rid of in this matchup. You have to play your own minion most of the time in order to be able to get there. But even so, still just a pretty disgusting second hand to get back.
I mean, he doesn't have to outcast it even the second glide.
That's true.
If he just wants to get his own quest done, that's quest 2. Like, at the moment, outcasting glide would just be net neutral for Gur. Because of the 4 cards, so I don't hate just gliding again. Get quest 2 done. It does mean that if you get Il'gynoth back for the 3rd time, it's pretty awkward because that's it for the discounts. Or at least you have to discover another glide to get it back in the deck. But I just feel like getting Kurtrus as soon as possible is the name of the game here.
Agreed. And it's also a really nice hand to get back from Glide, most likely, because he hasn't used a single card draw effect so far, so you're very likely to find Spectral Sights, as we see there. Maybe Acrobatics as well would be a very, very nice inclusion.
Well, in a vacuum, it's no longer correct to damage the mage at this point, but he has to get the Tusk Piercer down to 1 charge. So I think you still go for it, even though Gur gets armor. That's still nowhere near enough to outlast the maximum break points from Alutemu. And yes, Gur will have the potential to play another Ice Barrier, but that's not Alutemu's main concern here, right? He just wants to make sure Quest and Kurtrus are in hand next turn, and Gur on the chopping block in 2 or 3 turns time.
Not looking good for him, is it? Not looking good at all. We need to see some very rapid quest completion, which can happen, admittedly. If he goes Studies here, I believe Arcane is the last one he needs to play on level 1, and then Brain Freeze, Hot Streak, Cram Session. That's 2 levels done on this turn if he wants to go about it that way. It's not terrible.
And that's 2 glides he's seen, so it's okay.
True.
If he just wants to end with the Dawn Grasp in hand. Yes, there's still Studies to potentially discover it, but I don't think Gur has the luxury to play around discoveries at this point. Like, Alutemu's off to the races, Gur needs to keep up the pace. And I would definitely take a Blood Mage Thalnos as my freeze target. Keep drawing through the deck, that seems amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're in so bad of a position that it's Astromancer Solarian. You can always consider it just to have Solarian Prime as your 1 out. But again, he's a Phoenix gamer. Like, I don't know, man. I just don't like Phoenix that much in matchups like these. I get that you get to accrue all your spells for more spell damage, and Cram Session is nice, of course. But don't you want to get your quest done? Like, you have to play these Frost spells.
I agree. I mean, like, the Thalnos could have drawn him 1 immediately, right? So it's you can make that argument. If he's trying to argue for Cram Session with Phoenix, I guess it's 2 less draws, the Thalnos, but like, it's Varden in hand sooner, which is way more draws than Cram Session with Phoenix. It takes so long for this to wake up, and this is not a matchup where you're trying to maximize damage that didn't start in your deck by taking Phoenix. Like, Alutemu can't get above 30. You just want to kill them before they kill you. But that being said, Alutemu has now drawn Il'gynoth at the worst possible timing. He's back again, Derek.
He truly is, yeah, and it's not a situation where I think you can tempo him out, even if it is the full 6 mana, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to get the combo online. It's just too scary.
But does Alutemu try to complete the quest even without the guarantee here? Yes, not going to float the 6 mana. He has, there you go, Kurtrus in hand.
Insta, absolute insta. And again, even though it's an awkward hand, these Spectral Sights are very unlikely to ever be outcast. That's okay. You can live with that because you're just trying to find the acrobatics, trying to find the double jump, and get through this deck, which admittedly might be a little slow. Having seen both glides, 1 acrobatics now, both Spectral Sights unoutcasted in hand, could be at least 2, maybe 3 turns before Alutemu can do the combo.
But if Gur's not progressing his own quest, he kind of has his time, right?
True.
I mean, Gur, it feels like he's held on to free spells to deal with the Kurtrus, but it comes at the cost of having this entire dead turn 6, right? Yes, he'll be able to draw a bit more with the Phoenix potentially, but it's feeling a bit slow at the moment. Alutemu has the capability of drawing with this Spectral Sight. Yeah, this one's never getting outcast, right? The one on the right. The one on the left still has potential.
All right, Phoenix is woken up. Gur surely has got what he's set up for. This has to be some kind of a pop-off turn. We want to see Varden, if not in hand, available to be put in hand and played next turn.
I mean, it can not be played this turn, right? Because the cheapest arcane spell he had... Oh, wait, it could have been, sorry. If he went Cram Session, Hot Streak, and the Flurry, right? Arcanist was playable, but then you don't get to Cram Session for max draw. I think I'd be inclined to stay still worth it because it still draws 3 with Phoenix, right?
He was only on level 2. He needs another full
Oh, my bad.
layer.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it was honestly kind of close with double hot streak and ignite. I think we would have ended up like 1 mana off being able to do so.
Okay, in that case, then just end up with the Arcanist in hand is the best he's got.
Build trader, you can just trade it if you need to get rid of something as well.
Yeah, agreed. King, sure.
I want to play his hot streak while it's 0 mana. I mean, again, he can get Varden in hand and just have more mana spare. I guess he can just go hot streak, Varden, Cram Session next turn, which is fine as well. And they get more damage from the ignite.
Yeah, might still be playing around generated glide as well. I don't think there is any particular upside to playing the ignite right away.
Oh.
Wow.
Ooh. Okay, now...
next turn, certainly.
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking at it next turn. Well over. It's
He just I-beams the Phoenix and chills. He's never dead from 29 without a Dawngrasp played already.
Yep, just a very simple game, honestly, for Alutemu. I feel like any decisions I was putting in there were just complicating things somewhat. It was very simple. Obviously, he did manage to get acrobatics off the top and then got Moargs and Guild Traders and the Philosophy, which is a pretty nice order to have the rest of your deck in. But there were only so many bad cards left that he could have drawn, actually.
And in retrospect, perhaps I was being hard on Gur for the Phoenix pick because even with the potential Brain Freeze played on his Thalnos was very far off from getting the quest done right. He would still need another Frost target. I still think I'd have taken the Thalnos and Cycle just to get that immediate draw. Maybe you hit the other Ice Barrier here and there because I feel like you just don't have that much time in the matchup. But I also see where Gur is coming from for sure. Trying to, on average, get himself the quest completion at the same time he can get most draws from the Cram Session with the Phoenix.
And would you look at that, easy as you like, Alutemu going through 5 and 2 in this last game. Very, very well played. A hard-fought series and a pretty good showcase of how last era standing can go, right? It was just counters back and forth all the way through, which I think does imply that both players had a pretty good lineup construction, right? At least for each other. They were never left completely high and dry. It was just the fact that Alutemu got that Q order at the start, played that Hunter very well, and got the win over the Druid that put him in such a good position and allows him to qualify through to the semi-finals tomorrow.
Very cleanly done by Alutemu. Only one glide that was really annoying here. The other glide was fair, not a scam, just used on his own hand. Alutemu with the full 120 here is flexing a little bit. It's rare that we see that specific breakpoint from OTK Demon Hunter, but it's not rare to see the Demon Hunter at all. It is fully back in this meta. It's a terror to be dealt with, and I think it's one of the reasons that Libram Paladin is being banned away, because I feel like that's one of the few decks that has a lot of game versus OTK Demon Hunter. They don't get too destroyed by Glide. They can put down big threats, individual minions, and they can disrupt spells with their secrets. So even though Gur did not end up taking the series, I do think his lineup was quite good overall.
Indeed, yeah, I really like the lineup from both of these players, honestly. I think Mage actually holds a lot of merit this week when a lot of the aggro decks have gone by the wayside. Hunter, I don't think was necessarily expected to see all too much of. I suppose some of the decks that it preys on have been weakened somewhat, like Handlock has gotten weaker, Shaman has gotten weaker. And Rogue and Demon Hunter can be a little bit tough. But if you're banning away Rogue, I do think that Mage was still a reasonable enough bring. And it's just unfortunate that we didn't get to see the best outing of it from Gur at the end there. But Alutemu, again, trying to secure his spot right up at the top of the leaderboard. It's currently looking like he won't be able to contest Give Please or Possessy, given that they have such an extreme advantage right up at the top with 2 wins from Give Please. And, of course, the 5 points carried over from Possessy last season. But Alutemu is just getting close to 100% locking that spot within playoffs, which we always expect to